Welcome to today's deep dive.
Hmm.
We're unpacking a really fascinating set of notes and source material today, centered around this concept called the architecture of self-romance.
Yeah, it is such a compelling text.
It really is. And our mission for this deep dive is to basically figure out why we are just so notoriously terrible at receiving love
Mm.
and, how to fundamentally restructure the way we relate to ourselves.
Right, which is something I think everyone struggles with on some level.
Exactly. So to kick this off, I want you, the listener, to picture a story. It's this incredibly old story, um, older even than our modern concept of a soulmate, but I feel like it's one you probably know in your bones.
Oh, the ancient Greek myth?
Yeah, that one.
Yeah.
So in this myth, human beings were originally these perfectly whole, round creatures, like we had 4 legs, 4 arms, and 2 faces,
Just kind of rolling around.
just happily spinning through the world,
Mm.
entirely complete, entirely self-sufficient. But, the story goes that the gods actually grew intimidated by our strength and our completeness.
Because they couldn't control us.
Right. So as a punishment, we were split right down the middle, just cleft in two. And we were sent out into the world, literally doomed to spend the rest of human history desperately searching for that other half.
The one missing piece.
Yeah, the missing piece that would finally make us whole again.
It's a profoundly enduring story, honestly, because it so perfectly captures this very specific human ache. That ambient, lingering feeling of incompleteness that just seems to shadow the whole human condition.
Right, it resonates on this totally visceral level.
Mm.
But today's source material actually points out a massive plot hole in this ancient myth.
A plot hole that most of us just completely accept.
Exactly. Because the story captures the ache beautifully, but it gets the location entirely wrong. Like, it tells you that your missing half is out there somewhere in the external world.
Which sends us all on this wild goose chase.
Right. It sends you searching outward, scanning the faces of strangers across a crowded room, as if, I don't know, the missing piece of your own psychology could only ever be found walking around in someone else's body.
And our sources pose a really radical question here. What if that missing half was never actually lost in a crowd at all?
Oh, man.
What if that missing half was basically left behind inside the very person carrying the story?
Okay, let's unpack this. Because to me, searching for your soulmate in a crowded room, it's a bit like frantically looking for your glasses when they're already sitting on top of your head.
Oh, that is a perfect analogy.
Right. You're tearing the house apart, you're exhausted, you're so frustrated, and you're entirely missing the fact that the very thing you were looking for is already physically attached to you.
Yeah, the source text actually presents a really foundational concept to explain how we ended up in this weird state. It says that love is essentially a current.
Like electricity.
Exactly like that. It's a flow of energy, it's a quality of attention, and it's this deliberate application of care. But for so many of us, through, socialization, trauma, or just simple habit, that current has been hardwired to run in exactly one direction.
Yeah.
Outward. We pour it out endlessly into the world, toward our friends, our partners, colleagues, our children. But the wiring simply doesn't exist to turn the current around and run it back toward the person doing the giving.
So it's just this one-way street?
Completely.
Wow. But if we recognize that this missing half, this so-called soulmate, is already inside us, we have to confront an absolutely wild paradox.
Oh, the empathy paradox.
Yeah, like why on earth do we treat this internal half so terribly? The cognitive dissonance between our external generosity and our internal hostility is just staggering.
It really is night and day.
We are these highly functioning altruists out in the world, but we operate a literal totalitarian regime inside our own heads.
The source provides such a vivid illustration of this dichotomy. I want you to picture a friend who is just boundlessly generous with everyone in her life.
Like the classic mom friend.
Right. She is the person who remembers exactly how her friends take their coffee. She's the one who shows up at your door with a thermos of soup before you even think to ask, just because she noticed you were sniffling yesterday. Oh, I love people like that.
They're the best. She forgives quickly, she listens completely,
Mm.
and she actively searches for what is good in the people she loves and tells them out loud, without waiting for a birthday or a special occasion.
Yeah, we all know someone exactly like that. Or, maybe you listening to this right now are that person.
But the catch is what happens when that external audience is removed.
Right.
Watch what happens when that exact same person is alone and something goes wrong. Like, she makes a minor mistake at work, or she's lying in bed at 2 a.m. replaying an awkward conversation from 3 years ago.
We've all been there.
The voice that shows up in her head is unrecognizable from the one she uses on anyone else. It is fast, It is ice cold. It doesn't even wait for her to finish a thought before it jumps in to correct her.
To analyze her flaws.
Exactly, to analyze her flaws and just tear her down.
It's awful. And the hypocrisy is painful to look at once you actually notice it. Like, we would immediately end a friendship with someone who spoke to our friends that way.
Oh, absolutely. If someone walked up to your best friend and spoke to them with the coldness and precision your inner critic uses on you, you would cut them out of your life on the spot.
You'd call them abusive.
You would. But we never once consider ending this toxic relationship with our own internal voice. Are we just, I don't know, gluttons for punishment?
Well, no, we don't end it because we fundamentally misunderstand its origin. It isn't a lack of capacity for love. I mean, clearly the capacity is massive.
Yeah, look, the soup.
Right, look at the soup. Look at the intricate memory of the coffee orders. Look at the unprompted forgiveness she offers others. The source emphasizes that this is purely a wiring issue.
A wiring issue, okay.
Yeah. The neurological and emotional channel that directs love inward has simply never been opened. It's a dormant pathway. And the text points out that this channel cannot open passively.
It doesn't just happen on its own.
No, it has to be open on purpose.
So it requires deliberate intervention. Like, it isn't a natural byproduct of aging or gaining life experience.
Not at all.
If you don't actively forge this internal relationship, the totalitarian regime just stays in power. But, and I love this about the source text, the intervention it suggests isn't some grand retreat or a massive life overhaul.
No, it's very small.
It happens in these microscopic, quiet moments. It shows up mid-sentence as a gentle, conscious correction to that cold inner voice. It's actively deploying the tone that used to be reserved exclusively for other people.
Yes, catching a negative spiral and physically replacing the thought.
Right, with something like, that's not true, actually. That was a hard day, not a character flaw.
And those microcorrections are everything. A hard day, not a character flaw. When you repeat that edit over and over, you are literally carving a new neural pathway.
Wow.
Eventually, it stops being a forced translation and just naturally becomes the default language of your internal monologue.
But wait, if we're operating this internal dictatorship and the internal environment is so hostile, you'd think we'd be desperate for external validation to offset it.
Right, that's the logical assumption.
Because if rewiring the internal voice is this exhausting, tedious process of catching every single negative thought, why can't we just outsource the job?
Outsource it to someone else.
Yeah. Why can't we just find a partner who will say all those nice things for us, soak up their love, and use that to balance out the inner critic?
Because structurally, it is impossible to outsource.
Impossible.
Impossible. The external validation cannot penetrate a hostile internal environment. And this introduces one of the most vital concepts in the text, the architecture of receiving.
The architecture of receiving, okay. I'm assuming the source is talking about our internal psychological capacity to actually process and internalize care.
Exactly. We often think of love as an object, something someone hands to you, and you simply take it.
Like a gift.
Right. But what's fascinating here is what happens to a compliment when it's given to someone who is structurally filled with self-contempt.
It bounces off.
Yes. Someone can look you in the eye and say, you are brilliant, or you are beautiful, or you are incredibly good at what you do. And they can mean it with absolute, undeniable sincerity.
But if you hate that part of yourself.
Exactly. If you hold a deep-seated contempt for that specific part of yourself, the words simply do not land. They slide straight off. The source uses this incredible imagery. It says it slides off the way water slides off a waxed hood without leaving a mark.
The waxed hood. Oh, that's so good. Because the sincerity of the person throwing the water actually doesn't matter at all if the surface they're throwing it at is chemically sealed shut.
Right. The water just beads up and rolls away.
It's like a digital firewall. It's like trying to plug a modern USB cord into an ancient wall outlet without an adapter.
Oh, I like that.
The power is being offered. The sincerity is there, but the receiver just isn't built to catch the charge. The external validation is incoming data. Someone is trying to send you this file of love or praise. But your internal operating system, which is running on contempt, recognizes that praise as foreign, malicious code.
Because it contradicts your core belief about yourself.
Exactly. So the firewall just blocks it at the port. It gets rejected before it ever reaches the processor.
And contempt does not sit passively in your mind. It is a highly active structural sealant. Nothing sticks to it, no matter the volume or the intensity of the love aimed in its direction.
It's impenetrable.
Until it isn't. Contrast that mechanism with what happens when someone finally dismantles that firewall. When they make peace with their hidden parts and look at themselves without flinching.
Then what happens?
Suddenly, that exact same compliment, aimed at the exact same place, stops sliding off. It finally lands. As the text describes it, the compliment lands lower than the ears.
Lower than the ears. Wow.
Right. It bypasses the intellectual defense mechanisms and actually warms something in the physical body on the way down.
Because the underlying architecture has fundamentally changed, the port is open.
Exactly. It isn't a matter of fairness or, someone being more deserving of love than someone else. It is a matter of physics and architecture.
It's a structural reality.
Exactly. Whatever you offer yourself privately, in the quiet of your own mind, becomes the absolute structural ceiling for what you are capable of receiving from anyone else.
Okay, whatever you offer yourself privately is the ceiling for what you can receive from others. That actually explains so much about the mechanics of failed relationships.
It really does.
Because if our internal architecture is sealed off like a waxed hood, we can't receive love, but we still feel the ache of being incomplete.
We still want the missing half.
Right. So we end up looking for external relationships to somehow magically bypass our own internal security systems, which just seems to set the stage for repeating the same toxic cycles over and over.
Yes. The repeating cycles are a direct symptom of this architectural flaw. The text points out that there is a profound reason certain shapes and dynamics keep showing up in a person's relationships, long after the specific individuals involved have changed.
Like when you start dating someone entirely new.
Right.
And on paper, they have a completely different personality from your ex. But 6 months into the relationship, you have your first conflict, and they go completely, stonewallingly quiet.
Just shut down.
Exactly like your last partner, and exactly like the partner before that. In those moments, it genuinely feels like the universe is playing a very unfunny, deterministic joke on you.
It feels like a cosmic joke for sure, but it is actually a deeply psychological mechanism. The source describes it as a room that never got fully looked at.
An unfinished room.
Yeah, an unfinished room from your past that keeps being offered back to you, just dressed up in a different outfit.
Wait. Are you saying we're purposefully seeking out people who withhold from us?
Mm-hmm.
Or who go quiet? Just so we can finally win an old argument from our past?
It sounds counterintuitive, I know.
Because if we are unconsciously hunting for people who will hurt us in familiar ways, that sounds incredibly bleak and just exhausting.
Well, if we connect this to the bigger picture, it isn't conscious sabotage, and you aren't hunting for pain. It is an unconscious drive for resolution.
Resolution. Okay.
It's an old, unfinished emotional exchange that is resurfacing because your psyche is hoping that this time the script will change and the question will finally get answered.
Oh, I see.
The pain you feel when your new partner goes quiet isn't just about today's silence. The reaction is so disproportionate, so intensely agonizing because it is standing in the exact same footprint where an earlier silence once stood.
Like a ghost in the room.
Exactly. A room in your past, perhaps from childhood, that went quiet at the exact wrong moment, long before you had the language or the agency to demand what you needed.
So the new person is just a proxy.
They are.
They are wearing the shape of the old wound. And we are trying to force this brand new person into finally speaking, trying to force them to fix the old wound, to change the ending of a movie that was filmed 20 years ago.
And that is solving the wrong equation.
Right.
The unfinished business was always with the first silence. That original silence is still sitting underneath the floorboards of your internal architecture, just waiting for someone to finally turn toward it with the authority and the compassion that was missing the first time.
And the only person with access to those floorboards is you.
The only person.
Okay, so if trying to force the new partner to salve the old wound is the wrong equation, how do we stop the cycle? Like, how do we address the unfinished room without relying on a proxy?
The text suggests that the right equation is a process of calibration.
Calibration.
It is about becoming an instrument of perfect pitch.
Like a musician who can identify a note without a reference tone.
Precisely the same mechanism. The source explains that when someone spends months actively giving themselves patience, giving it to themselves way past the point where it's convenient or easy, they develop perfect pitch for what genuine patience actually feels like.
Well, because they've practiced it.
Right. Their internal instrument becomes finely calibrated to the frequency of real care. Because they have generated it internally, they have a baseline. So when real patience shows up elsewhere, in a partner or a friend, They recognize instantly.
They don't need to cross-reference it or question its motives.
Exactly.
And having that baseline must also function as a highly sensitive alarm system for the inverse, right?
Oh, a huge alarm system.
Like when you know exactly what real unconditional care feels like because you have painstakingly practiced it on yourself, you spot the counterfeit stuff immediately.
You can't unsee it.
You instantly notice when someone offers you a smaller, diluted portion of care, or care that is heavily loaded with hidden conditions, or care that conveniently evaporates the second it requires a sacrifice on their part.
The text captures this physical recognition beautifully. It says, you know it, the way skin knows cold water from lukewarm the second it makes contact.
Oh, that's visceral.
You don't have to intellectually analyze the interaction. Your nervous system just knows.
But wait, if we develop this perfect pitch, if our nervous system is dialed in to only accept genuine, flawless care, doesn't that run the risk of making us hypercritical of the people around us?
That's a very common fear.
Like, if we refuse to accept anything less than perfectly calibrated love, won't we just end up isolating ourselves? Because no human being can meet that standard 100% of the time.
It is the most common fear associated with raising your own standards. But there is a crucial distinction between demanding perfection and recognizing a baseline of safety.
Actually, as we're discussing this, I think the lukewarm water analogy actually answers my own concern.
How so?
Well, having perfect pitch doesn't make you a hypercritical perfectionist. It just saves you an enormous amount of time and emotional energy.
Yes.
Like, you don't demand that the water is exactly 98.6 degrees at all times, but you absolutely stop wasting years of your life shivering in lukewarm water, frantically trying to convince yourself and everyone around you that it's actually warm.
Exactly. You stop negotiating with your own physical reality. You stop gaslighting your own nervous system.
Right.
But this calibration must happen at home first. You have to calibrate the instrument on yourself, in private, before it ever measures anyone else. When you do the agonizing work of providing that care for yourself, you no longer need someone else to argue you into recognizing what real care is.
Because you already hold the reference tone.
You already hold it.
Okay, so this brings us to the practical application, the million-dollar question. If you are listening to this deep dive right now, and you are realizing that your internal architecture is basically a condemned building.
And your perfect pitch is completely out of tune.
Right. How do you actually execute this? Building an architecture of self-romance sounds grand and poetic, but what does the actual construction look like on a random Tuesday morning?
This raises an important question, which the text answers by asking us to fundamentally reevaluate how we define romance in the first place.
Okay.
We have been conditioned to view romance as a series of grand, orchestrated occasions. Anniversaries, expensive dinners, dramatic, sweeping gestures.
The movie stuff.
Exactly. But if you strip away the occasion, what is the actual mechanism of romance?
Just paying attention.
Yes. It is noticing someone had a hard day before they even have to articulate it. It's learning the exact specifications of their coffee order. It's leaving a small surprise for them to find. It's the feeling of missing them in the middle of a random, unstructured afternoon.
And absolutely none of those mechanisms require the presence of a second person.
Not one. Every single behavior on that list is simply a form of attention. The text calls it a quality of attention, and attention does not check your ID before it decides where to land.
It's just a tool.
Right. The exact same observational skill that clocks your friend's hard day can be turned inward to clock your own emotional depletion. The same impulse that drives you to write an encouraging note to a partner can be used to write one to be found later by yourself.
Oh.
Romance was never a scarce resource that could only be manufactured in the space between two people. It was a renewable energy source available to you this entire time. It was just constantly aimed outward out of pure habit.
Here's where it gets really interesting to me, because this totally shatters our Hollywood conditioning of what it means to, love yourself.
Oh, completely.
Real self-romance isn't standing outside your own window with a boombox in the rain.
No.
It's not buying yourself a dozen long-stemmed roses and staring deeply into the mirror. It is incredibly, almost frustratingly mundane. It's literally just forcing yourself to close your laptop and go to sleep at 11 p.m. because you promised yourself you would.
It is the boring, unglamorous building blocks of trust.
The boring way.
Trust is not established with a single grand declaration of intent. It gets built neurologically, the boring way. Going to bed at the hour you promised. Finishing the part of a project that is deeply tedious, pushing past the point where quitting would be incredibly easy to justify.
It's the practice of not abandoning yourself at the very first sign of discomfort.
Exactly. You wouldn't physically walk away from someone you deeply loved the second they felt uncomfortable or anxious.
No, you'd stay with them.
So you have to stop abandoning yourself when you experience those exact same feelings. You learn to speak to yourself in private using the exact same vocabulary and tone you would be comfortable using in front of an audience.
Right.
Neurologically, your brain tracks these actions. Every time you follow through, it registers as consistency. It is just one kept promise stacked on top of the last kept promise over and over until you finally have enough of them to form a solid foundation to stand on.
And that foundation of kept promises is the architecture.
That is the architecture.
Now, this brings us all the way back to the beginning, back to that ancient Greek myth.
Of 4 legs and 2 faces.
Yeah, the humans split down the middle by intimidated gods, wandering the earth, searching for their missing piece. The profound takeaway from this deep dive into our sources is that those two separated halves were never you and some handsome stranger across a crowded room.
They were the half of you that already knows so beautifully how to give and the half of you that never quite learned how to receive. They have been wandering around separately for years, living inside the exact same body, each one entirely certain that the other was missing.
Just searching in exactly the wrong direction.
But the reunion that the ancient story promises is real. It just had the wrong address.
I love that.
The reunion doesn't arrive by way of a stranger's validation. It arrives on the day that your giving half and your receiving half finally pull up a chair, sit down right across from each other, recognize the undeniable resemblance, and stop treating each other like enemies.
Like old friends.
It is the exact same current of love, finally allowed to run in both directions at the exact same volume.
That reframing really changes the entire landscape of how we look at our own inner monologue.
And if your internal architecture truly dictates what external love you are capable of catching, consider this final thought. Your relationship with yourself isn't just a private matter happening quietly in the confines of your own head. It is actively shaping the physical reality of the people you draw into your life. By refusing to build a home for yourself internally, you might be inadvertently designing the exact lonely crowd you were so desperately searching through.
That is something to sit with. Thank you for joining us on this deep dive. Take a hard, honest look at your own internal architecture today, check the wiring, and maybe start by just closing the laptop when you promised you would. We'll catch you on the next one.